them, but okay. Okay, I think we can start. Listen, Rabbi Leibtag, all of those who teach Torah know how much we love to teach, and it's really Erev Pesach. It's almost mamash Erev Pesach in Israel, so we should hear good things. But we're going to do the KiTisa Torah, which of course is a little bit different in Chutz La'aretz than it is in Israel, at least for the second day Yom Tov. Rabbi, are you going to say the thing about Kol HaBechor? We only laying that in Chutz La'aretz?
The three times, yeah. The three times we laid it.
You're going to say that, right?
Yeah. It's about.
So I don't have to say it. I'll let you say it.
It's where Hamakom Hashivchar Hashem.
Right. Only people in the Chutz La'aretz have to hear that reading. Yes, I know. Okay. All right, Vakasha.
Okay. So last week I was on my way to the airport. It took me 3 days to get back to Israel because of the news last week. But Baruch Hashem, I made it back by Tuesday night. But I remember giving a shir. I forgot exactly what I covered. So I'm going to review what we did last week and get to work on this week. In a nutshell, there's no shortage of parshiot to pick for Chol HaMoed laning. If you remember the difference between Chol HaMoed Pesach and Chol HaMoed Chag HaMatzot and Chol HaMoed Sukkos, what do we read every day? We just read Parshat Pinchas, correct? We don't take out two Sefer Torah and Chol HaMoed. We take out only one, if I'm not mistaken. And on Pesach, we take out two because there's a lot more to read from. We have the whole story of the Exodus in Shemot chapters 12 and 13, and all the laws. We have the Shalosh Regalim in Parshat Mishpatim. We have Shalosh Regalim in Parshat KiTisa. We read on Shabbat. We have Pesach Sheni in Sefer Bamidbar. We have the holidays and more, which Sfirat Omer. We're going to read second day Yom Tov because of Sfirat Omer. We're going to have Parshat Re'eh, Kol HaBechor. So basically, we could have even 10 days of Yom Tov. We'd have what to do. But we only have 7. So what I want to cover today is review chapters 12 and 13 in Shemot, where we started last week, and explain the laning for the first day Yom Tov, and then get to Parshat Emor, which is second day Yom Tov, which is Sfirat Omer, which we're going to start after Yom Tov, and also explain why we always read for Maftir, no matter what the holiday is, we read from Parshat Pinchas. So let's get to work, and I'll share my source sheet. And here we are. Okay. This is a quick review from last week. If you have a Chumash open in front of you, especially Korno, will help a lot. But just a quick review. In Parshat HaChodesh, we read the beginning of chapter 12, which was God's command to Moshe, first to start counting the years, the months of the year, from the month of Nisan, and then a law for Bnei Yisrael we call Pesach Mitzrayim, which was Pesach Mitzrayim was to prepare them to be worthy, to be saved from Makat Bechorot, and to have a family meal, and to, we had all the multi-purpose reasons for the miracle, to convince the Egyptians that Jewish sacrifice can stop a plague. We talked about all those. But those are the laws of Pesach Mitzrayim. And then we had this transition pasuk, which could go either way, to remember Pesach Mitzrayim forever and celebrate that every year, or as an introduction to laws of 7 days of Chag HaMatzot. And if that was the case, the next set of laws in Pshat had to be given later, but they're inserted here. And that was the 7 days of Chag HaMatzot to remember that we left Egypt. And just a quick review, which we've talked about many times. There's two very basic reasons for eating matzah. There's the matzah that we eat with the Korban Pesach, or with the Zevach Pesach, because it's a type of a Korban Todah. It's a Thanksgiving offering. And every Korban comes with bread, but not chametz. And also, because we're rejecting Egyptian culture, they can't have chametz, and we're leaving Egypt. We take the Egyptian god. That's our main course. We have anti-Egyptian bread. We have maror salad to remember the bitterness, but makes still the sandwich taste better. So there's logic of eating matzah with the Pesach, even if we didn't leave Egypt that night. And then there's logic of celebrating 7 days from the 15th to the 21st, the week that we left Egypt, because all we had to eat that week was matzah, because we were rushed out of Egypt and took our dough with us, and we had no other supplies. That's the reason for Chag HaMatzot. Remember, Chag HaMatzot reminds us how we left Egypt, whereas where Pesach Mitzrayim and Pesach Torah reminds us of how God saved us from the plague of the firstborn. And the holidays overlap on the first night of Pesach, but in theory, they're two separate holidays, as proven by Pesach Sheni, where we can have Pesach without Chag HaMatzot in the second month. Okay, that was a review of Parshat HaChodesh. The laning for the first day Yom Tov is going to start with verse 21, where Moshe tells the people, Mishchu Chulechem Tzon Pesach, get rid of your idol worship, and take the Pesach, how to sprinkle the blood, etc. And then the commandment of Pesach for all future generations with the question, if your children ask you, tell them it's Sebach Pesach. And that's followed by the story of the Exodus, the 10th plague, how we leave Egypt in a rush, how the Egyptians rush us out of Egypt, Pharaoh finally gives in. And then the laws of Chukat Pesach, which I think we talked about briefly at the end, which this last set of laws over here, which Imshad had to be given earlier. And the main thing I tried to explain last week is that the laws of Chukat Pesach should have been given before we left Egypt. The laws of 7 days of Chag HaMatzot, these laws, should have been given after we leave Egypt. And what Chumash basically does, it takes this parshiah that belongs here. Let me do a little annotate for a second. I've used this tool in a while. We want to draw a line here. Okay. Okay. We want to take this parshiah here, and really belongs here after we leave Egypt. And this parsha here, Zot Chukat Pesach, about the need for Brit Milah before Pesach, really belongs over here. So basically, and we try to explain the reason. That was objective analysis. I try to explain the reason because not eating matzah and hence not having chametz relates to the need to get rid of your chametz to be worthy of leaving Egypt. So thematically, there's a connection between getting rid of your chametz, and which is punishable by karet if you don't get rid of your chametz, because if you're not worthy of redemption, you're basically off the team. You don't have the right to thank God for redemption if you don't get rid of your chametz, symbolizing getting rid of your idol worship or bad behavior, representing your worthiness, the need to be worthy. And then the laws of Chukat Pesach, which require Brit Milah before Pesach, makes, even though it was given beforehand, we juxtapose it to the 400 years, which are over here. Remember, it was 400 years, or 430 years. I'll make that a 30. 430 years. It was 400 plus 30, I should, right? That was God fulfilling Brit Ben Abtarim, and then juxtaposing it to, if you're going to think after Brit Ben Abtarim, beforehand you have to Brit Milah. Basically the same idea that if you're thinking after your national redemption, you have to be committed at the personal level to be a proper servant of God. Okay, so that's the landing for the first day that we talked about last week. Then Moshe tells these laws after we leave Egypt in chapter 13. Moshe tells these laws to Bnei Israel. Let's just stop the share for a second. Moshe tells the laws to Bnei Israel in chapter 13 after they leave Egypt, and wait, that's okay. And then that's Chag HaMatzot and get rid of your chametz. And then Moshe tells the laws of Kedusha Bechor after that, and that's the laning for one of the days of Chalamoid, and that's the parshiot in your tefillin. Now, we established Pesach Mitzrayim was we discussed whether it's a korban or a family meal. We tried to explain how it's a bit of both. Pesach Dorot, its purpose to remember Makat Bechorot, and Chag HaMatzot, remember how and why we left Egypt, and then why they're out of order. Okay, that was a review of last week. Now we're going to get to Parshat Pinchas. Now we'll start today's share, and I want to begin with Parshat Pinchas. Just a quick review. I'm going to share my screen. If you have a Chumash open, it's easier. I'm going to share a screen which is just in Hebrew. From no, I don't want that. I want Perek, not this one. I want Perek. I want Torah. We want Sefer Bamid. Let me open up a different window. Here, Bamidbar, chapters 28. And it's real simple. In chapter 28, the topic is not the holidays. The topic is the daily Korban in the Mikdash. Just a quick review. We know this by heart. We read this every Rosh Chodesh. By Dabar Hashem Moshe Lemor. The opening commandment. Savet b'nei Yisrael v'amata lehem et korbani lachmid li'ishai reach nichochit yishmur li lapid l'ado. The daily commandment is, on a regular basis, we have to bring the Korban Tamid, and we're highlighting it's a reach nichoch, Isha Hashem. Let me stop the share and do a quick mute. Mute.
I asked her if she wanted any.
Already. Sorry about that. And now we go back and share screen again. And we're back. No, we don't want that. We want We want share screen or Chumash. Here we go. Okay. So we have the classic Moadei Hashem. We have the classic Korban Tamid, which is a Reach Nichoach. And Reach Nichoach reminds us of the flood story, where God smells the Reach Nichoach and enters a brit with mankind in nature, not to start over again, but we're living in a world of tshuva. And therefore the Korban reminds us of our connection to God. And then we have the daily Korban, the day went a kevas a day, and then we have every Shabbat a double tamid, 2 kvasim. Then on Rosh Chodesh we have the bigger Korban, which we'll talk about soon, which is two parim, 2 cows, 1 ayil, 1 ram, 7 lambs, and the flour offering proportionate to the size of the animal, and a sin offering, a chatat from a sirizim. We'll return to all these in a minute. And there we go. That was Shabbat, that was Rosh Chodesh. And now we go to, in order, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, in the month of Nisan on the 14th is Pesach. Mark your calendar. Pesach is on the 14th of Nisan. And on the 15th of Nisan is 7 days of Chag HaMatzot. And then the special Korban you bring on those 7 days. And then we go to what we call Shavuot, what this calls Yom HaBikurim. And that continues into chapter 29, which is what we call Rosh Hashanah, which this parsha calls Yom Torah. And then we have Yom Kippur, and then we have the 7 days of Chag of Sukkot, and we end with Shemini Atzeret. And that's the calendar, and I'll just review it on the source sheet now, and we'll go back to this in a minute. But I go back to my source sheet, what do we have? We have, basically, the pattern is nice and simple. We have the daily Korban, the weekly Korban, the monthly Korban, and the holidays. In case you forgot, every time we daven Musaf, other than Shabbat itself, every Rosh Chodesh, every holiday, we always take out at least one Sefer Torah. And if we take out one Sefer Torah, we read from this section, from Parshat Pinchas, Bamidbar chapters 28 and 29, the appropriate section. And if it's, when we take out 2 Sefer Torah, then this is always the mafter, the second one. It's the most read section from Chumash, more than any other parsha for sure. Now, what's the pattern? Other than the daily Korban and Shabbat, which is like a double daily Korban, almost every Musaf has the exact same pattern. What does it have? It has a certain amount of parim. I guess I'll call parim cows. On Rosh Chodesh is 2 parim, 2 cows, 1 ram, and 7 lambs. And that's a burnt offering for God. And a sin offering is sirizim achad. What's going to change on the holidays? The number of parim can be 1 or 2. We'll see the pattern in a minute, when it's 1 and when it's 2. It's always 1 ayol la'olah, 1 ram, always 7 kvasim, and always 1 sirizim l'chatat. Where is there an exception to that? The only exception is going to be on Sukkot, where, pardon the pun, we go ballistic. We have a lot more bulls. We have 13 parim, and then we have then we go down every day, and we end up with 70 over this, from 13 down to 7 on the 7 days of Chag HaMatzot. And the amount of elim in kvasim is double. It's 2 elim instead of 1, and 14 kvasim instead of 7. We're not going to do that today, but that's because Sukkot has a double nature. It's a Tishrei holiday and a Shalosh Regalim holiday. I'll try to explain that when we explain what the Shalosh Regalim holidays are. Now, remember, Rosh Chodesh is setting the calendar for the months of the year. And here we have lunar dates for all the holidays, whenever possible. And we have a group of holidays which share the same Korban, which is what? We see Rosh Chodesh, Chag HaMatzot, and what we call Shavuot have the exact same Korban, which is what? 2 parim, again, 2 bulls, 1 ram, 7 kvasim, and 7 lambs, and a sir lachatat. Now, the classic question we have all the time is, why all of a sudden is there a need to bring so many sacrifices on Yom Tov? And I'll go back and just explain first without stop the share. I'll make, maybe call it a bold assumption, that God doesn't need to be fed. Hope we all accept that. In other words, if we're bringing a korban, it's not God doesn't need the korban. We need to do something symbolic of our relationship with God, and the korbanot are symbolic of that relationship. It's called in Shama Prince Fatenu that the bringing the korban is for the Jewish people to remember the nature of the relationship with God and the purpose of the holiday. Now, I want to just go back quickly to the concept of how the korbanot relate to the holiday. Let me share my screen real fast. Remember in Sefer Bamidbar, I'll open up an English Hebrew one now. The numbers, here we go. In Sefer Bamidbar in chapter 10, there's the one-time law of chatzotzrot, of trumpets in the desert. And then we're told, after laws of chatzotzrot, two psukim, which we're all familiar with. The first one, which unfortunately is two, we've been dealing with this last half of year. Should war be imminent in your land and you're about to be attacked by an enemy, then we need to blow shofrot or chatzotzrot. We blow a truah sound. We need to remember that God is judging us. We need to remember that God's judging us. Therefore, zikron is what we need to do. And zikron is also what God does. God judges us. He's zocher, he judges us. And we have to remember that we're being judged based on our deeds. But of course, we have to remember that God can forgive us if we're worthy of his forgiveness. That's midat rachamim. So we need to do something to wake ourselves up. We have to wake ourselves up. We blow shofar or play chatzotzrot, we blow trumpets to remember that our relationship with God and the outcome of the war is a function of God, which is a function of our deeds. And therefore, if we remember that, that's going to be a transformative memory that will enable God, for God to help us from our enemies. And I base that on Shlomo's Tefillah in Sefer, in chapter 8 in Sefer Menachem Aleph. We've done that before. In addition to that, even when you're not in trouble, there's still a need sometimes to blow the chatzotzrot, to blow the trumpets, to remember. Which are all the holidays we just mentioned, and by chance, all the times we say Yalav Yavo. Then we're commanded to blow a tkiyah with the trumpets on our sacrifices that we bring to God, and there'll be a zikaron in front of Hashem. Ani Hashem Elokechem. We all know this pasuk because it's the grand finale of Rosh Hashanah Musaf, which includes Malchiyot, Zichronot, and Shofrot. Malchiyot is Ani Hashem Elokechem, as Rashi points out. Zichronot is Vei Lechem Zikaron, Lifnei Hashem Elokechem, and Shofrot is Katem B'Chatzotzrot. It's the last pasuk of, technically, it's the last pasuk of Shofrot in Rosh Hashanah davening, but it really summarizes all three, as Rashi points out here on the spot. Now, what do we see from here? That the need to blow shofar together with the korbanot tells us that korbanot are part of prayer. And that's why when the rabbis instituted prayer corresponding to the korbanot, they're onto something major. Even if there was a Beit HaMikdash, it's not that the feeding God and bringing korbanot would make a difference. It's the emotions and the understanding that bringing the korban would have an effect on us that'll affect God's decision and his judgment of his people. That's why when we say Yalav Yavo, we're asking God for a good judgment on these times of the year. Now, why are we being judged? I referred to this as I think we use this analogy. When war's imminent, that's like when you go to the dentist for a root canal, you need to go when you're in pain. And then even when you're not in pain, even when you don't have a toothache, you go for a routine checkup to make sure you won't need to go later for a root canal. In other words, the holidays are a type of routine checkup with God. When do we do the routine checkup? Primarily on the critical times of the agricultural year, as we'll see soon in Parshat Emor. And also every Rosh Chodesh we get a special bonus. We get like a monthly quiz instead of a yearly judgment. And God gives us Rosh Chodesh as a special time once a month to reestablish our relationship with God and be worthy of a good judgment. Now, what I want to explain is why specifically is how these sacrifices should have an effect upon us. So I think we've done this before, but just a quick review. My claim is that the stories in Sefer Bereshit, and we'll see later one in Shmot, are going to give the background to understand the meaning of the Korban. Just a quick reminder, I'll start with the easiest one. If we're going to bring a sin offering, what animal is the best animal to choose based on stories in Sefer Bereshit to remind us of a sin, especially a collective sin of sinat chinam. That should be real as easy as could be. What story in Sefer Bereshit? Anyone can chat it or say it. There's a famous story in Sefer Bereshit that reminds us of sinat chinam.
Yosef.
Yeah, Yosef and his brothers. There's even a musical about it. It's so obvious. Remember, I'll show you the psukim in a minute. Now, if I'm bringing a burnt offering, what's the first class example of an olah to God instead of ourselves? That's going to be obviously the Akedah story. Therefore, don't be surprised for bringing an ayol olah. Those are the two easy ones. I want to, based on those two, if those two have clear sources in Sefer Bereshit, I'm assuming the other two have sources as well, and that's what I want to go to now quickly. Let's go back to our source sheet. They're all right there. Where are we? Okay. So the Korban Tzibor on the holidays, again, Rosh Chodesh, we're going to see Chag HaMatzot and Yom HaBikurim are all identical. 2 parim, 1 ayol, 7 kvasim, and a series of chatat. So the Akedah has the ayol olah. Remember? Now, whatever the message of the Akedah story is, ask your local philosopher, rabbi, guidance, it's Parshan. There's multiple meanings to the Akedah story, but it must carry a deep meaning about the nature of our relationship with God and His tension, and therefore the ayol reminds us of that story of the Akedah and its message. Now, I'll skip to Yosef and his brothers. Okay, remember they take Yosef's coat after they threw him in the pit and sold him. By Shkutu Sirizim, they shech a goat, and they take the blood of the goat. They dip his coat, the clone of Yosef, in the blood. They send it to the father, for the father to think that it's his fault. Remember, thinking that his father sent Yosef all alone on a dangerous trip, and that way they take the blame off themselves and put the blame on their father. And only some 20 years later, they realize they made a terrible mistake when they say Abba Shemim Anachnu. But that's the classic story that tells us the dangers of sinat chinam that there's always good reasons for. Now, if I want to go back to the olah. So the parim, I think, are simple. If I go to what we call Nasa V'Nishma in Sefer Shmot, Moshe writes down all the words of God in Har Sinai. He builds a mizbech at the bottom of the mountain, remember? And he puts up 12 monuments. He sends the young people of Israel, they bring olot and shlamim to God. And what animals are brought at Har Sinai? He takes olot and shlamim from parim, specifically from bulls or from cows. They take the blood of those parim and put it into big containers called agonot, and then Moshe takes the Sefer Abrit, could be the 10 Commandments. Big argument exactly what specifically Sefer Abrit, but it's definitely our commitment to be God's people. He reads it, and the people answer Nasa V'Nishma. And I should have, let me just read a real Chumash instead. So we have the English. Go back to Sefer Shmot. I didn't copy the most important part. How did we lose that there? Sefer Shmot 24/7. I gotta do the English Hebrew now. Moshe comes down from the mountain, tells the people the words of God and all His laws. The people answer, "We're going to do it." Moshe writes them all down. He builds a mizbeach, builds an altar, 12 monuments. He sends the young people of Israel, maybe the firstborn, to bring the olot and the parim. Moshe takes the blood and puts them in big containers called agonot. The other half of the blood puts on the altar. He reads the Sefer Abrit, and the people answer, Nasa V'Nishma. The community of Israel makes a commitment to be God's people forever. And then Moshe, Vaykoch Moshe Tadam, Vayzrok Ala'am. Moshe takes the blood of the parim, sprinkles on the people. And what's Moshe say? This blood represents this brit that God made between Himself and the people of Israel. So if I have dam parim on a holiday, that needs to remind me of our commitment to be God's people forever. Now, the only other story that explains the parim, the ayol olah now makes perfect sense. That's why it's always one ayol. And then if I go back to Sefer Bereshit, there's Bereshit here. We read this on Rosh Hashanah. I don't think, not by chance. In chapter 21 in Sefer Bereshit, after Hashem Pakaret Sarah, Yitzchak is born. we have one final story between Avram and Avimelech in verse 21. At that time, okay, Avimelech, let me make this bigger. At that time, I'll make it a lot bigger. Verse 21, verse 22. Avimelech, together with the head of his army, tells Avram, Elohim imcha b'chol asher ata oseh. For the first time after all their interactions, Avimelech, his father was king, he's the classic king of a foreign nation. He has an army, he's sovereign, and he has a positive relationship with Avram Avinu, and sees Avram as a representative of God and as a mentor. And therefore, he says, God's with you, therefore, swear to me. And what do you call it? They make a treaty for up to 4 generations, and be kind to me like I was kind with you. Basically, he wants to get along. He's looking up to Avram as a mentor and as a partner in society. And Avram agrees to the treaty. And then Avram gives Musar, he gives Tochacha, he gives rebuke to Avimelech about water rights of the land. And Avimelech agrees, you're right, I have no idea. I don't know who did it, but just tell me and he'll take care of it. But basically, Avram now becomes the mentor for Avimelech's behavior. And Avram now gives a gift to Avimelech. They enter a covenant to work together. And then as a symbol of that covenant, Avram takes 7 lambs, 7 kivsot hatzon. And Avimelech asks Avram, what's the meaning of these 7 lambs? And he says, these 7 lambs represent the rights, we have the rights to this water, but it's going to be the symbol of the brit. Therefore, they call the place Beersheba to this day. And that's where they made a treaty to work together and be honest with each other. And Avram now becomes the mentor. Remember, he calls them earlier, called him Nasi Elima Tapatochini, you're like a prince of God. Avimelech, basically in this story, Avram reaches pretty much the apex of his career where everyone looks up to him. And therefore, they make a brit in Beersheba. Avimelech is able to leave and they return to their land nearby in Eretz Plishtim. Avram builds an Eshel in Beersheba. And Avram now in Beersheba, where he made this treaty, calls out in the name of God to all the people around him. And that's Avram fulfilling the goal of Hodu Hashem Kiru Bishmo. Whereas Avram is able to make a name for God because he's established, because he's respected, because of the way he lives his life. And therefore, being a light to other nations is represented by the story of Avimelech and the 7 Kvasim. Now, if I put all these together now, all these korbanot that we bring on a regular basis on holidays where we're gathering as a nation to remember why we're chosen and the purpose of our chosenness, then Davi Musaf can have, I think, special meaning if we understand what the original purpose of these korbanot were. Basically, what happens? We're going to bring Parim to remember our commitment to be God's people at Har Sinai, Shemot 24/7. I ought to remember the message of our individual connection to God and the theme of the Akedah. 7 Chosim, remembering that we need to be light to other nations. And the Sirizim, to remember the dangers of Sinat Chinam and the whole process of doing Shuvah and being careful not to fall into the pitfalls of Sinat Chinam. And those are, each one are super key messages that relate especially to our national behavior. Again, our national commitment to be God's people on the holidays, together with the personal commitment, together with being a light to other nations and understanding our purpose, and the constant warning of the dangers of Sinat Chinam, not just sin, but sin against a fellow Jew, thinking it's always for a good reason, and how to be careful of that. So in light of that, that's going to explain when we gather together on a holiday, for whatever the reason of the holiday will be, which we'll see in Parshat Amor, on regular basis, we bring these korbanot in the Beit HaMikdash. What did they do? When they brought these korbanot, we saw in chapter 10 in Sefer Bamidbar, we blew shofar. If you know the Mishnah, Masechet Tamid, when they blew shofar, the Levim opened up and said Pirkei Tehillim. And most of the Pirkei Tehillim, which is nowadays Shir Yom, is rebuke and guidance about Miyaleh Bahar Hashem. Remember? Shiftu Dal V'Yatom, Anishvat Stiko. No, it's talking, but each parak is a type of rebuke to the people to remind them of how they need to behave. Okay, the sources. I think did Rabbi J send a copy of the sources? They'll be up. I don't think I can share my file. It'll be up. I'll send it. So by the end of the year, I'll put it up when I take the questions. I have to save the file to the hard drive and to a drive, but I think they should be up on the website by the end of this year. Okay. So that was my little add-on to make Musaf meaningful. And that's when all the holidays, when we take out at least one Sefer Torah, we read always from Parshat Pinchas, and it's always the second one on the holidays. It's also what we quote in Musaf. When we daven Musaf, we always quote from Parshat Pinchas. In my opinion, it's a section of Chumash everyone should know and study sometimes in their Jewish education. And from my experience, most students never studied. They might have heard of Pinchas, the story of Pinchas, with the spear and everything, but knowing the holidays in Pinchas and where they are as a unit, most students are less aware of. But it's something, because it's so basic to our prayers, and everyone should know where it's from in Chumash. Now, let's get to, here we go. Here's the source sheet. Very good. Thanks, Ruth. Now, back to our custom. Who remembers a custom that's spread among most Jewish communities on Chol Hamoed when we lane from Parshat Pinchas, we sing what's called Ka'ele. It's called Ka'ele Tasu Layom Shibat Yamim. Anyone have that? Yeah, Asher's nodding his head. Now, people remember the word, but I simply want to explain what pshat is and how special that is. So let's take a look now. I'll share my screen again and go back now to my Chumash, and which we want this one, Bamidbar Chavchet. Okay. Now we want to go back to Chavchet, back to Perek Chavchet. Now we can make it a little bit bigger. Again, the English is not so important here. The main thing is the unit. Okay. Remember Rosh Chodesh is the 2 parim, 1 ayo, 7 kvasim, and a sir lachatat. So on the first month is Pesach. Okay. It's a standalone. On the 15th is a holiday called Chag Shivat Matzim. Now, what's really interesting, I'm not sure if I shared this with you before, the description of the holidays in Pinchas is slightly different than its description in Emor. Hopefully we'll get to Emor soon and see the description of the holiday. Moadei Hashem in Parshat Emor defines the holiday itself. The topic in Parshat Emor, in Sefer Vayikra, are the holidays and the purpose. The topic in Parshat Pinchas is the sacrifice we bring on the day, the Tamid and the Musaf. But when we describe the holiday, we don't describe the holiday, we describe what we do on the holiday. I'll try to prove that. Understand? What do we do on these holidays, not what's the purpose of the holiday. For example, what do we do on Yom Kippur? We'll see in a minute. Yom Kippur is not called Yom Kippur. It's called, I'll just jump ahead to Yom Kippur. That's the best example. On Yom Kippur, what's it say? That's not the holiday, that's what we do on the holiday. And what we don't do, what do we do on Rosh Hashanah? Rosh Hashanah is called Yom HaZikaron. It's a day where God remembers us. But what do we do? Yom Teruah Yelachem. Yom Teruah, the purpose of the holiday is not to blow shofar. What we do on the holidays, we blow shofar. We blow shofar to remember that God's judging us. But we describe the holiday by what we do. Sukkot isn't called Sukkot. On the 15th day of the 7th month, Mikra Kodesh, Utasu, we celebrate for 7 days. We don't even call it Sukkot here. What do? We celebrate. And then we bring, of course, the Korban that we talk about. But the holidays are described by what we do on the holiday. Even on the 8th day. What do we have? We have an Atzeret. We have a gathering. But that's what we do. And what we don't do. If that's the case, what do we do on the 14th? We bring a Pesach Hashem. And what do we do on the 15th? We'll see. We eat matzah. So look how, I'll give it even a better example. We'll end with Pesach. Look what happens on what we call Shavuot. Okay? What do we do? After counting 7 weeks, we bring a flour offering in the Beit HaMikdash from the new grain. Remember, we can eat the new grain after Pesach already, after the first day of Chol Hamoed. In the Mikdash, we don't bring the new grain until after Shavuot. So that's called Yom HaBikurim. So all the holidays are described by what we do on the holiday. And again, followed by what we don't do. Now, in that case, what do we do on the 14th of the month? We have Pesach. We bring the Korban Pesach. On the 15th, what do? We have a Chag. Shivat Yamim Matzot Yachel. It's not called Chag HaMatzot. It's called we eat matzah for 7 days. Okay? We have a gathering on the first day. Now, look at the korban that we bring on the first day. V'yikraftem Mishel Hashem parim b'nei bakar shnayim. Again, 2 cows, 2 bulls, 1 ayah, 1 ram, and 7 lambs. Got it? And the flour offering, based on the size of the animal. Remember, in Yisaron for a keves, 2 esronim for an ayah, and 3 esronim for a par, all relative. Stirizim l'chad l'chatat l'chaper alechem. In addition to the daily olat atamid. Now, usually when it comes to korbanot like the Nisim in Parshat Naso, we do each day separately. Finally, right? What do we have? We finally have what's called like a little quotation mark there. Instead of repeating it for every day, we finally say ka'ela. We have the exact same korban for these 7 days. I'll use the other source sheet. I have it better, have it more highlighted. Where are we here? Here we are. Okay. So on the 14th day of the month, Pesach Hashem. On the 15th, 7 days, Matzot Yechel. First day, Mikra Kodesh. What's the Mikra Hashem? What's the korban we bring? 2 parim. Shnai, got it? Ayah Achad. 7 kvasim. Just like Rosh Chodesh. It relates to the moon and the lunar date. Now, in case I didn't mention, but the lunar dates of holidays are only in Emor and Pinchas. We don't have lunar dates in Re'eh or in Shmot, or in with the Shalosh Regalim and Mishpatim and KiTisa. Of course, we have the lunar date for Pesach in Shmot chapter 12. Now, so we bring the same thing, and instead of going day by day, what do we see when we're done? We get Sirachad Lachatat Lachaper Lechem. They say Ke'ela means we do the same thing for all 7 days of Chag HaMatzot, even the last day. Now, the last day is special because we have a Bikra Kodesh, we gather, we don't do Malacha. It's a Yom Tov, but it's the exact same Korban. Now, who knows what halacha lamaisa is because of this, right? Because of the fact that there's nothing new, the Korban doesn't change. How does that affect how we daven? Anyone remember how that affects our davening? And other minhagim.
Problem.
Yeah, that's why that's the real reason we do Chatzi Halel. The other reason about Masei Yadai Bim B'Yam, that's a later add-on. It's cute, it might be true, but that's not the technical reason. The other difference is we don't make a Shechianu, right? On the 7th day of Chag HaMatzot, on the last day of Chag HaMatzot, we don't make a Shechianu, if I'm not mistaken. Am I right? And when you light candles, you don't say Shechianu on the last day. It's all because of that Ka'ela. Now, that's why people in Shul are so happy with Ka'ela, because it's a shorter davening. Maybe that's the reason they sing Ka'ela. But it's nice Tamei Mikra. But again, I'm assuming people know Ka'ela. I want to explain where it's coming from and how it affects the reason we don't make a Shechianu on the last day of Yom Tov and when we do Chatzi Halel. Now, a little add-on, which I'm not sure if I'm right, but there's something that bothered me for years, and that is in all through Parshat Emor, sometimes it says Milvad Olat Tamid, sometimes it says Al Olat Tamid. I'll show you what I mean. On Yom HaShabbat, we bring what? 2 kvasim, Al Olat Tamid. Got it? In addition, Al Tamid. On Rosh Chodesh, what do we bring? Al Olat Tamid. Right? How about Chag HaMatzot? What do we do? What's it say? Al Olat Tamid. Got that? Now, what happens here? I'm sorry. I skipped one. Oh, here. Here it says Milvad Olat Tamid. Okay? But on the first day, on the first day of Chag HaMatzot, we say Milvad Olat Tamid. And then for the 7 days, we say Al Olat Tamid. Hope that's clear. I'll say it again. On every day is the Korban Tamid. Shabbat is Al Olat Tamid. Rosh Chodesh also is Al Olat Tamid. The first time we have Milvad Olat Tamid is on the first day of Chag HaMatzot. Got that? Milvad Olat Tamid before the Ke'ela. Now, then we say Ke'ela is Shivat Yamim.
Menachem?
Yeah.
It says
Milvad
Milvad
Olat
Boker.
Asher Lo Tamid. I mean, but the word Milvad.
So there's that extra, but it's accepted.
Okay, Milvad Olat Boker, Asher Lo Tamid. Okay, but we have the word Milvad, and here we have Al Olat Tamid. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, Al Olat Tamid. Yes, I've been isko. Olat Tamid, but Olat Haboker Asher Olat Tamid. Okay, it's a little bit longer. Now, how about Yom HaBikurim? What's it say? Milvad Olat Tamid. Without the Al Asher Olat Haboker. Let's take a look at the rest of them. Perach Avtet, Rosh Hashanah, what is it? Milvad Olat Tamid. Yom Kippur, what's it say? Milvad Olat Tamid. Chag HaMatzot, Chag HaSukkot, what's it say? Milvad Olat Tamid. And every single one is Milvad, you can check it out. They're all Milvads. Milvad, got it? And so we have Milvad Olat Tamid and Milvad.
On
Got that?
Shana, it also has Milvad Olat HaChodesh.
Asher Olat Tamid. Okay, but you always have the word milvad as opposed to al. That's all. I'm saying now. It seems like it's rather random, but I think I found the pattern. What happens when there's a new holiday that's once a year? It's milvad, and when it's something that's on a regular basis, it's al. So Shabbos happens all the time. All right. So Shabbos is al tamid. Rosh Chodesh often every month. It's not once a year. Whenever I have a once a year holiday. I have it, it's milvad. But the 6 days of Chag HaMatzot, the last 6 days of Chag HaMatzot, there's nothing new. So I go back to Al. But all the other holidays, the Korban is unique to that holiday. And therefore, Yom HaBikurim, milvad. Yom HaZikaron, milvad. There was all the holidays, and because Chag HaSukkot, every day has a special, different Korban, it's going to be milvad olat tamid. And Shmini Atzeres is also going to be milvad, but the 6 days of the last 6 days of Chag HaMatzot is similar to Rosh Chodesh and Shabbat because it's nothing new. It's the same thing as the Korban before. Okay, it could be the reason. I found the pattern totally technical, no deep meaning, nothing special other than how come it says al and sometimes milvad. That might be the reason. If I'm right, I'm not sure, but. If anyone heard a different reason, I'd be more than happy to share it with people. Okay, now.
Okay, I don't want to nitpick here.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's from the Psukim. It sounds like on Chag HaMatzot, there's a double lashon. It's al olat tamid, but then there's a milvad in verse 23. Milvad olat haboker. That's the
no, Chag HaMatzot, not Pesach. Chag HaMatzot.
Chag HaMatzot, correct. Chag HaMatzot, milvad,
and
on
the first day of Chag HaMatzot.
Al olat.
That the second I have Ke'ela, and the same thing, nothing new is happening.
Okay, the Ke'ela is al because it's
Ke'ela is al, but the first day is milvad. It's not a din. The first day of Pesach, the first day of Chag HaMatzot is unique. The next 6 days are the same, and therefore it's al. That's the only pattern. There's definitely a pattern. It's sometimes al milvad, and that would explain the difference. Again, no deep meaning, just a technicality. It's called nitpicking, I agree, but just for the fun of it. There was something that bothered me, and I just thought of it one time. Okay, now let's get to the Modeh Hashem. Now that was it. So we covered Parsha Bamidbar. That's every day's landing for Maftir. Now we can stop this share and go back to my regular source sheet. And oh my gosh, it's late. I shouldn't have done that. It took up too much time. Okay, Parshat Emor. I made a quick little outline how Parshat Emor works. I'll show it in the Chumash. But first we have the intro, the first 3 lines, Mo'edei Hashem. Mo'ed is from the Shorish Vad, Liva'ed, to meet. Vav Ayin Daled. Therefore, there are times that we meet God. And Ohel Mo'ed is a tent of meeting where we meet God. Mo'edei Hashem are times of the year that we meet God. Now, where do we meet God? B'makom HaShivchar. That's the law. That's the holidays in Re'eh. Or we come and meet God wherever his house will be. But the idea of holidays is we meet God. Nowadays we don't have a mikdash, we go to shul, and we gather there, but we meet the place that represents our connection to God. Now we'll talk about the string's introduction to the holiday, but we have the introduction of the first 2 psukim, and we parenthetically mention Shabbat, which is Tchila Mikrei Kodesh. I'm not sure if you're aware, when you say Kiddush Friday night, you're referring to these 3 psukim, which we'll go to show you in a minute, but it's the introduction to the Mikrei Kodesh. Mikra Kodesh is a time we call out people together, basically national holidays. And Shabbat is the introduction to the holiday season. It's not a Moed, but it's a Mikra Kodesh. I'll try to explain as we see the Psukim. Then there's Psukim of Chag HaMatzot. We'll see in a minute. 5 Psukim of Chag HaMatzot, which aren't telling us anything we didn't know before from Sefer Shmot. And then we have Sfirat Omer, which is totally new. I'll explain why it's a type of an insert, right? Because it doesn't have a lunar date. Then we have Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaKippurim in the next section with their lunar dates. And the question is, are they agricultural, or what's the reason for the holidays? We'll try to understand. Then we have the 7 days of Sukkot, which again are presented twice. Sukkot, we have its lunar date with no explanation, just a holiday. And then we have a strange summary, we'll see in a minute, of the Moedim. And then we go to Sukkot again. So basically, Pesach and Chag HaMatzot, Chag HaMatzot and Chag HaSukkot, each one has a double presentation. Pesach, I have the Chag HaMatzot side, the Moed, with nothing agricultural, remembering leaving Egypt. And then I have Sfirat Omer, which is agricultural, which starts sometime on Chol Hamoed. Now, Sukkot, we have it presented first with its lunar date, nothing agricultural. And then we're going to have Sukkot presented again after the summary with its agricultural element, with Chag HaSif. Got it? Which shows you that the holidays have a double nature. They're all historical and they're all agricultural. Meaning, even if there wasn't an historical event, I would have an agricultural holiday because they're all key times of the agricultural year. And even if I didn't have an agricultural event, I would need a holiday to remember the theme of that holiday. It was that every holiday, every Jewish holiday has a core theme that relates to our relationship with God. Be it God's Midat HaRachamim and Yom Kippur, God's kingdom, Malchiot and Rosh Hashanah, our freedom from Egypt in the Exodus story, and not letting prosperity get to our head. Sukkot time, it's Kol Chivot Tzem Yadi, Sukkot time. Each one has a theme which applies to every day of your life, but once a year that theme gets a booster shot. I've used many times that Mother's Day analogy. All the holidays focus on core themes of day-to-day Judaism, which I think relates directly to Korban, to Parshat Pinchas. There's Yolat HaTamid, which is our daily Korban. Every holiday has a booster shot, but the purpose of the booster shot on the seasonal holidays is to make our day-to-day life and our day-to-day relationship with God extra meaningful. So every holiday is going to have a core theme that needs a little boost. Remember why we use the Mother's Day analogy? Because really every day is Mother's Day, but once a year I go crazy about it to make sure every day is Mother's Day. It's not saying only today, but because every day it's important, once a year I need a booster for that theme. So that's why the Korban Tamid going together with the extra Korban on the holiday, that it's so basic to our Judaism, but I think it's reflected when we saw in Parshat Pinchas with all the holidays based on the Olat HaTamid. Got the idea? I think it's a logical explanation for why Chumash goes out of its way to say Olat HaTamid or Milad Olat HaTamid. It's the daily Korban Tamid. In addition to that, I bring something extra, but that extra goes back to how I behave every day. Rav Mital would always quote, I forgot where the source is, it's a midrash somewhere, that at the Keves Achat Taseh B'Boker, but Keves Taseh Ben Arbaim is a Klal Gadol b'Torah. There's Rabbi Kiva says in Vayikra, after the Recha Kamocha is a Klal Gadol. I forgot which Tana says that, but another Tana says that at the Keves Achat Taseh B'Boker is a bigger Klal than after Recha Kamocha. Because it's a Klal, or your daily routine is how you build your daily routine, how you live your life with your fellow man and with God. That's the car in your relationship with God. The holidays are there to boost it. Now, it's like you want to use it, but forget the Mother's Day analogy. Celebrating an anniversary, right? Is the key to marriage is the day-to-day life or vacation time or holiday time? It's each one builds on the other, but the core relationship is a day-to-day. Now, So that's the mivneh. And I need to go back now to a chumash. Again, I'm sorry I have to do this with the Hebrew chumash because you can't see the parshiot in a English Hebrew chumash. Nothing you can do about it. So we got to go back now to Emor. Bam bam bam. Should be. What happened to Emor? No, what happened to me here? Here we are. Okay. Now look at the structure again. Look at the parshiot. That's what's important for me. The first three psukim, right? God tells Moshe, tell them Moadei Hashem, Moadei Kodesh, parenthetically Shabbat, and then Ele Moadei Hashem. That should be clear. In other words, here's the header. God tells Moshe, tell Bnei Israel, these are Moadei Hashem. These are the times we meet God, and we decide when to meet. Because we decide when Rosh Chodesh is, because these all have lunar dates. You decide. We call Dikrei Kodesh. In contrast to Shabbat, which is set, it's not up to us. Every 7 days is Shabbat. That's set ever since the month started falling, and that doesn't change. But Rosh Chodesh is up to us. Therefore, we call out and we call people and gather. These are Moadim. Parenthetically Shabbat, and then here are the Moadim. Because Shabbat is not a Moed, because it's not based on the lunar calendar. It's based on the sun every 7 days. But the Moadim are based on the lunar calendar. Now, why Shabbat first? So there's a famous, what do you call it? Rabbi brings it down to tell you that technically why Melacha and Shabbos is different. But basically, if I want to make it nice and clear and nice and simple, keeping Shabbat, not doing work on Shabbat creates Shabbat. If I don't know, it's Shvitat Melacha, like stopping all creativity on Shabbat. That's what makes it Shabbat. In other words, what makes Shabbos is stopping your work. On Yom Tov, I call it a bank holiday. Not working enables a holiday. Doesn't create the holiday. You follow? When you Mekabel Shabbat, when you stop working, when you stop all creativity, that's what makes it Shabbat. Not working is the essence of Shabbat. You could, but you don't. You hold back. You could be creative, and you hold back from your creativity. That act of Shvita creates Shabbat. On Yom Tov, the goal is not to work, but to enable a holiday with its theme. The banks have to be closed. That's what the Rambam calls Melacha Shebesadot. Means working in the field. Means the work you can't do. Basically, what most people think. Most people don't keep Shabbos or keep half Shabbos, whatever you want to call it. What they think Shabbos is what really Yom Tov is. Means I'm not going to my office on Shabbos. I can't drive my car. I can't watch television, but I'm not working on Shabbos. I don't go to the office. I don't do work on Shabbos, but I have a day off. No, that's basically we call bank holiday. That's Melacha on Yom Tov. To enable Yom Tov, to enable a national celebration, banks have to be closed. But it's not working that makes it Yom Tov. It's not working enables Yom Tov because the banks are closed, the market's closed, and now people can gather because no one has to go to work. Because the second banks are open, you don't have a holiday. People can't come to shul. Now, and therefore, the definition of Melacha on Shabbos is Kol Melacha, remember? And on Yom Tov, it's always Kol Melechet Avodah. That's famous. Read the Ramban on the Pshat, explains it beautifully. Ramban on the spot. I'm sure it's here. I forget which, either the Ramban here or the Ramban here. But Ramban in the beginning of Modim talks about what's called Melacha Shebesadot. Now, when you make Kiddush on Friday night, remember you say, Shabbat is Zecher L'Maseh Breshit. That's the Ten Commandments in Shmot. It's Tchilah B'Mikrei Kodesh, which is right here, the beginning of Emor. It's the introduction, and sort of so Melacha of Shabbat overrides Melacha on Yom Tov. When Shabbos comes out in Yom Tov, we follow Shabbos laws and not Yom Tov laws. And then it's also Zecher Mitzvah. That's the Ten Commandments in Devarim. That's what we say in Kiddush every Friday night. Now, so the first moed we have is, again, the 14th is Pesach and the 15th is Chag HaMatzot, but there's nothing we didn't know before. No, we knew all these laws beforehand. No Melacha, 7 days eating Chag HaMatzot, that's nothing new. The Chiddush is going to be what? Is going to be what we call Sfirat HaOmer. From Pasuk Tet to Chabet is going to be Sfirat HaOmer. And that's why we lane it on, this is to be laning on the second day of Chag HaMatzot, when we do Sfirat Omer. Now, even in Chutz La'aretz, we have different laning, I'm pretty sure, on the first day and second day, even though it's 2 days Yom Tov. Now, what I want you to notice is there can't be a lunar date for Sfirat Omer, and we'll see why. And that's why it's inserted. Notice there's a dibor, Ela Modeh Hashem, Daber B'nai Yisrael, Ela Modeh Hashem, right? And then we have the Moed. Then we have a new dibor because we're talking about a new topic. This is not a Moed. This is going to be something agricultural. It has nothing to do with the moon. Because when do we celebrate this holiday? Daber B'nai Yisrael Matadem. Pretend we only had this by itself. Tell B'nai Yisrael, when you come to the land, okay, and you begin your harvest, you bring the Omer to God. I'll go back to this pasuk in a minute with English Hebrew in a second. I want to simply go the rest of the parsha. The Korban Omer takes us right to Sfirat Omer for 7 weeks until we get to Chag HaShavuot, and that's basically our grain harvest in the land of Israel. Starts mid-April, ends mid-June, and that's the only time during the year you can collect grain, and that's why at the very end we have the laws of Leket, Shicha, and Peah, because that's how we thank God for our harvest. During our harvest, keep in mind there's other people in need, and then we have the lunar date for what we call Yom HaZikaron or Zichron Teruah, and the lunar date for Yom Kippurim, and then the laws of Sukkot with the summary of the Moadim in the middle, Moadei Hashem. After I finish Sukkot with nothing agricultural, and after I finish my summary of the Moadim, I go on the 15th day of the month, Bas Bechemet Tvot Haaretz, when we bring in our grain harvest, we have a Chag for 7 days. And then we have the Arba Minim, the Lachtem, what do you call it? Beis Hadar, Chapot Marim, etc. And then we sit in Sukkot for 7 days. The Monday you do Torah Techem, and that's a Shir on Sukkot. I don't go into. Just I want to point out that Sukkot has a unique add-on for its agricultural aspect. Those the Modim are all lunar, and but the national holidays where we gather, they'll have an historical element to it. That's sitting in Sukkot. But they also have an agricultural element, and the agricultural element is presented in a unique manner. Here it's an add-on after the summary for Sukkot, and by Pesach, or by Sfirat Omer, it's inserted between the Moedim with a separate dibor. Follow? This whole section here is an insert. Now, what I want to do is I want to read this insert and pretend it's not here. Pretend this was somewhere else in Chumash, okay? Pretend this dibor stood alone without being included in Emor. I might understand how the rabbis read this and what Chumash is up to. So let me stop this here and open up a regular English Hebrew Chumash. We have right here. Genesis, we don't want Genesis, we want Leviticus chapter 23. Okay. Verse 9. Listen carefully. God tells Moshe, tell Bnei Israel, tell them, when you come to land which I'm giving you, and you do what? And you begin your harvest, bring
share screen, please.
Menachem,
I didn't share my screen. My mistake. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you. We can do share my screen, and here we go. Thank you for reminding me. Okay. Sefer Vayikra, chapter 20. There. We just had Pesach and Chag HaMatzot. We finished. A new dibor. God tells Bnei Israel, when you come to the land of Israel and you begin your grain harvest, this can't apply in the desert because there's no grain harvest in the desert, reading manna. You bring Omer from the beginning of your harvest to the Kohen. And then you wave the Omer in front of God. Mimorchat HaShabbat. Now, we have no idea what that means, correct? If this wasn't if this pasuk, if these psukim were not in the middle of Parshat Emor and stood alone, when would I do this? It depends. It's totally dependent on the grain harvest. It has nothing to do with Passover. Understand? It's whenever my grain begins to grow, depends on the season. Whenever the grain grows, the first Sunday of the grain harvest season, I wave something, and then I bring a special korban that day, and then I can start eating my first grain after I wave that, bring that special korban omer, and then I count 7 weeks, which is the 7 weeks of the grain harvest, and make a holiday called with the Shtei Lechem, etc., without going into all of it. And we call it in that day, Mikol Kol Shtei Lechem, This has nothing to do with the lunar calendar, has everything to do with an agricultural calendar. Make sense? Now, this could stand alone, but what does Chumash do? Chumash inserts this commandment in the middle of the holidays. So what's it basically telling you to do? By inserting this agricultural commandment in the middle of the lunar calendar of holidays, is telling you basically connect this holiday to Chag HaMatzot. You follow? I'm going to go back down to the other screen I just had. Where's my other screen? Here we go. That's why I'm saying this is, let me make this a lot smaller so you realize the insert. And my time is up, so I'll finish here. Just going to make the screen smaller. It's getting dark now because it's almost time for Marv. Okay? And I have to do B'tikat Chametz in a minute. Okay. So, you see what I've highlighted here? This whole section, remember, these are Moadim. Here's Moadei Hashem. Annotate and my little drawer here. Here. My line here. These are the Moadim. Got it? That's the first Moed. Then I have this whole section here, which has nothing to do with the Moadim. And then I begin again here with the next Moed on the 7th month on the first day. And basically this is inserted, the laws, this whole section here. I'm sorry about that. Can't draw so good here today. This whole section is inserted in the middle of the Moedim. How do the rabbis interpret that? God wants us to connect Sfirat Omer to the holiday of Chag HaMatzot. If that's the case, what's Mevorchat HaShabbat? Shabbat can be the first day of Yom Tov, which we have Shvitat Malacha. Now, why the 16th? That's a shir on Omer, which we don't have time to do. I've done that shir before. I did a whole series on the Mana and Shemitah and everything. And that's the whole shir on why it's called Omer. It goes back to the Mana. And I'll just give it in a nutshell, basically, is that, I'll stop with this, is that you can't miss the connection between Sfirat Omer and the story of the Mana, because how much man could you take? You're allowed to take Omer Lagogolet. On the source sheet, I have all the sources if you want to go over them again. The Omer prepares us for Matan Torah. The whole Mana experience starts 3 weeks before we get to Torah. The preparation for Matan Torah. But we're prepared. We prepare by how we share our food. And therefore, here's the commandment, God. Okay, we take an Omer per person. Omer was the amount that each person can take. And they measured Omer, it was a 10.55, but basically everyone took as much as they needed, not as much as they wanted. Now, what happens? In theory, everyone should take only as much as they need. Agreed? That would be like nice, good old comment. The problem is, sometimes, if there was grain every day of the year, there was grain in your field, there would be no need to hoard. Go out and harvest your grain as much a day at a time, and no reason to take more than you need. The problem is, because of the nature of our agriculture, grain only grows 2 months a year, and therefore I need to hoard to take as much as I need to hoard. You got it? That's my point? And therefore, I'm allowed to hoard to have as much as I need. No, but I can't overhoard. Got my point? So what Chumash is teaching you by bringing the Omer, what was the message of the Omer? What happened on Shabbat? But you take as much as you need every day, because there's nothing because the man won't fall on Shabbos, you're allowed to hoard on Friday. You understand what Friday teaches you? Friday teaches you that when God provides you surplus, you're a trustee for what you need. The goal is taking as much as you need. But if God gives you surplus, you're allowed to take the surplus, but you become a trustee to use it for when you need it. So it's okay to hoard. And sometimes you have to hoard because of the nature of agriculture. But because you're permitted to hoard, still keep in mind the needs of the less fortunate who don't have anything. And that's why during the grain harvest, when I need to hoard, because I need that grain for the whole year, and maybe even there might be famine the next year, I'm allowed to hoard. And therefore, what's Chumash tell you? And we're in this year with that. What's Chumash tell you? At the end of all these laws, you make this holiday. How do you apply it? When you do harvest your holiday, don't take your entire field, leave over a corner for the poor. Remember, leave over your leket, remember thing, and leave it for the poor and the needy. It's called lechet shicha and peah. Always have in mind, even though you're allowed to take more than you need, always remember there's people who don't have it all, and you have to find the balance between them. And that's what these mitzvot educate us and what we do with our prosperity, which is great. That's a whole different shir already on the Omer, but that prepares us for our Sinai. Anyway, I did that way too fast, but I have to stop now. Let's see if there's anything real quick in the chat. It's real important. Chat. Okay, check real fast. Okay, Chag Sameach and okay. V'nizkartem is wordplay. God judges you, and you remember that God's judging you. Look in the Parshanim. Nizkartem, I forget what's called, maybe reflexive or something like. I forget what the word is in English grammar, but it's you being remembered and God remembering you. We say it in Yalaviyah, don't we? Right? We ask God, Zechreinu l'tovah, give us a good judgment today. But we have to remember. We want God to remember Zichroneinu Zichron Avotenu. We want God to remember what we're doing, so that He'll give us a good judgment. Okay. Okay, got the sources there, I think. Okay. Rabbi Ari Kaplan translates solet for the mincha as wheat meal, not flour. Okay, wheat meal. Meal is ground flour, isn't it? Ground grain is meal?
No, it's a 15-minute shiur, and there's a
Okay.
darn good reason why it's dafka solet. Just remember the mission in Menachem that when the Gizbar had checked when somebody brought a mincha, how did he check it? He stuck his hand into it. If it came out white, it hadn't been properly
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I can add to that also because I did a chabur on that. When you add oil to the solet, when you add oil, it makes it that you can do KiTisa with it. If you grind it too fine, it's not moist, then you can't. It's not good for the mincha.
I think there's a way better way of explaining it, but it's a 15-minute shiur.
Okay, we'll do that later. Okay.
I can't give it to you. I
Okay,
can't.
we'll
give
talk
it
about
has
it
to
next
do with
time.
the structure and nutritional content of the wheat, and I think it's exceedingly significant why we have to bring a mincha with every korban.
Oh, that's for sure, because it's basically man's creativity is Tzelem Elokim is reflected by being domesticating wheat and domesticating animals. And that's why the korbanot are going to be from animals, from domesticated animals and from domesticated wheat, because that makes it different than animals. That's again a whole share. We'll discuss it one time. Okay. Why for the Chagim is Sefer Bamidbar not Vayikra? That's a good question. The laws of Bamidbar for sure belong in Vayikra, but all through Bamidbar, there's 5-6 different times where laws that belong in Vayikra and certain Bamidbar instead. That's a share in Sefer Bamidbar, which we've probably done a long time ago, but we can discuss that next week maybe. When we go through. Okay, anyway, I have to run to Marv. Milvad and Al. Okay, that's good. Thank you. Already. Anyway, everyone have a Chag Shabbos Sameach. We should have Gula again, hopefully. It's time for a good. It's time for a Gula holiday where something good happens on Yom Tov. So we can pray for that, and we should be worthy of that. And hopefully, this Pesach will be real Gula. So everyone have a Chag Sameach and a meaningful Seder.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Chag Sameach.